Welcome to Deep in the Stripes, the sickest Bengals podcast around. I am your host, Elise Jesse.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
I am so excited to introduce you to our guest this week. You know him as Wayne Boxmiller. He is with the Bengals Radio Network. I know him as Box, and you are going into the Hall of Fame. The Greater Cincinnati Society of Professional Journalism Hall of Fame on Monday. Box, congratulations. It could not happen to a better person.
Well, thank you. First of all, I was totally shocked. You and I were talking before, and I was telling you when they called, I thought they were inviting me to the event. I said, sure, I'll come and support it. And they said, no, you're one of the honorees. I'm like, whoa. I had to step back. I mean, again, we all do a lot of work in this space. As you know, a lot of talented people in the market. And for people to appreciate the work you've done, or the body of work, as it were, it's very gratifying, very humbling. I just was really beyond words when they said it, and to be able to share it with so many people, it's appreciative.
Yeah, you're one of the best. I love the way you interview. I love the way that you speak to players, and the way that you are able to conduct those relationships. Your style is one that I definitely look up to. So I'm very happy to have you joining me today. I know the players are big fans of yours, and I wanted to just kind of, after week one, well, we're not going to talk about week one very much, Box, because everybody wants to move on to the Chiefs, right? But after week one, what kind of sense did you have from the players after that loss to the Patriots?
I think to a player that they were disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing about this squad, even though it has a few changes from last year, is that there's a pride about them and an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And their expectation is, Super Bowl or bust. Mm-hmm. And so when you start off in a manner that you weren't expecting, it's really almost a little moment of calibration. Like, wait a minute, even though this is week one of 17, we still need to course correct, or really maybe clean up, some things that happen. For a lot of the things that didn't go right, a lot of things did go right. Mm-hmm. So, you have some things that work for you. You made some adjustments, you did some things, but overall, nobody's happy about starting 0-1, but the sky hasn't fallen. As I said on the post-game show, I saw people just, running to, grab cover and everything else as if the season's over. And I just kind of laughed and thought, wow, one game and people are overreacting.
Yeah, I almost feel like usually the first game of the season is a game for at least the starters to kind of knock off the dust, knock off the rust, to get ready for at least the speed of live action of a real game that matters. That's kind of how I view week one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, this is not last year's team.
Correct, yes.
This is a new team, new chemistry. Guys have to learn to play with each other in different ways, in different spaces. And you can say in training camp, if you go this way, I go that way, or I'm going to loop behind you. But until it happens in a game and it moves at real-time speed, you don't really know how you're going to react based on those nuances that you can't predict. Mm-hmm. And you just have to say, hey, next time that happens, trust me, I'm going to be right here. Or if you take this, then I'll take inside leverage, or whatever. But I think that you learn that with a new group of guys. And so there are some growing pains that come with, adding new guys to the roster and losing new guys. But again, when you think about the players to a man, and even the players they brought in, these guys are winners. They play at a high level. They know what they need to do this week. And I'm confident that the team that you saw last week will be vastly different than the team you see this week.
Yeah, I feel like especially the core guys who have been here for a couple of years, they seem to have a way about them where they are able to respond after adversity, after they face that adversity. For whatever reason, they just have the trait of responding well and responding quickly. And I do think that there is potential for them to respond in a big way in Arrowhead on Sunday. And one guy who is just extremely talented, who I wanted to ask you about, because I've been asked about him a lot and whether or not he affects the locker room. I personally haven't seen the Jamar Chase contract situation bleed out into the locker room at all. And I know a lot of people want to blame that situation for Sunday's loss, but I just, from my perspective, and I don't know how you feel about it being around the guys as often as you are, but from my perspective, once they step on that field, all they care about is winning. They don't care what the guarantees are for Jamar. They don't care if he's signed. Like, obviously they want him to sign, but they aren't worried about that once they step onto the field. Nothing else matters outside of winning for them.
You know, a lot of people graduated from Nostradamus University, and they think they know everything that goes on in the locker room and what this body language. I saw somebody say, well, his body language after the game said this, and I said, apparently you've not seen his body language after any other loss. Jamar Chase doesn't like losing, nor does anyone else in the locker room. And I think that people need to understand that the players in the locker room understand the game of football, but they also understand the business of football. Right now, Jamar is involved in the game and the business of football, and they all will have that turn and have had that turn. Evan McPherson just went through the business of football and got his contract done. You know, Joe Burrow, when he signed his last deal, it was the business of football. So guys understand, you know, there's nothing as far as animosity or anything like that. It's them understanding our teammate is trying to get the best deal possible for him as a player and for his family, for his future. And after that, it's going to be another player that's going to be involved in the business of football. So people need to just understand it's just like anybody else on their job. When it's time for your review, even though this is not an employee review, but when it's your review time and you're hoping to get a pay raise or earn a bonus, you know, nobody's walking around the office doing less work because they're focused on you. They're like, hey, man, I hope you get that bonus. You know, I hope you get that pay raise. So it's all good. So tell the pundits to calm down.
Calm down. It's okay. It's all going to be okay. And I think, I mean, in my opinion, the single most important connection on offense in order for the Bengals to succeed is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Their connection is absolutely vital, because when Jamar Chase, I mean, I don't know if people already forgot about last year, but the man is 24/7. He's always open.
Right.
You throw it, Joe Burrow even looks at Jamar Chase and tosses that football up, and Jamar Chase is going to catch it. And that's going to move the chains, move the football. I want to know from you what you think is the most important connection on offense.
So for me, the most important connection on offense to me is Zach and Joe.
Okay.
And I say this because Zach trusts Joe. Joe puts in the work. Joe studies. Joe is dedicated, totally dedicated to the game of football. And to have a player and a coach where there's a mutual respect, you know, if that quarterback can come to the sideline and say, look, I know we game plan for this, but I really am picking up on this tendency. And I believe that we can beat this matchup this way. He's going to let him do it because he trusts him implicitly. And that may be a one-on-one, not with Jamar, but it could be simply with T. And ISO that T has, whether T being 6'3" or 4, whatever, having a guy that's 5'10" and, you know, high pointing the ball, and knowing that T. Higgins, the basketball player, wide receiver, can take advantage of that matchup over and over again, because Joe Burrow's accuracy will put that ball where only the 6'4" guy can get it. And it may be because of the way they're rolling the coverage. So I think for me, that's what it is, because if you think back to, I'm trying to remember the game last year where Irv Smith had a matchup and Joe Burrow said, we saw the matchup and the perfect matchup was Irv Smith, and Irv did get open and run the corner route. And he got the ball to him, but it was because Joe saw that. But as you know, sometimes coaches want to run what they want to run. But I
Yes.
think Zach and Joe have this relationship where it's if Joe really believes he sees something or can do something, that he's going to allow him to do that. I think it probably always results in success.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like the trust allows a lot of flexibility as far as play calling and things like that. Do you think that maybe there was an element of maybe Zach and Joe having to knock off that rust in game one because Joe was out for a significant portion of last season, and then this was his first game back?
I think I think one thing nobody wants to do is give New England credit.
Okay,
You
yeah,
have to give
that's a
New
good
England
point.
credit. Gerard Mayo was under Bill Belichick for literally all of his football career as a
Hmm.
player and coach, and so he understands how to make it difficult for an offense. And they wanted to make the Bengals one-dimensional, and Gerard Mayo said that. So they were doing some things as well to make the matchup favor them. And Joe and the Bengals were trying to obviously do the same thing. But football, like all sports, is just a game of inches. And you think about probably 5 plays in the first couple of series that, a little bit here, a little bit there, one way or the other, and everything changes. Think about the Bengals not getting a first down in the first quarter, but
Hmm.
then in the second half, the Patriots don't get a first down in the third quarter. And so, those opportunities that are just the slightest of margins kind of avail themselves. But again, people take that as saying, well, this is not this or that's not that. I think a lot of times, give the Patriots credit. Their coach game plan well, the Bengals game plan well, and sometimes, as James Francis always says, the other guy gets paid too. So, we forget that. So I don't want to act like what happened wasn't good because it wasn't.
Hmm.
I think also it was the part that the game of football is such that we wrote, all of us, me included, I'm not going to lie, we wrote down 1-0
Yeah,
before the game even
I
started.
did too.
We all wrote down 1-0.
I
We
did too.
forget it's an NFL team they were playing, and
Hmm.
they got players that make plays on that team too. And I don't think the team, as in the Bengals, underestimated them. I think we did.
Yeah, I think so too. I think at least what I can speak for myself and say what I did was I looked at their patched up offensive line, and then I looked at the fact that they were starting Jacoby Brissett, which he can make plays, but he's been a career backup. Um, and I figured, yeah, they'll probably run the ball, but the Bengals will expect that and they will stop the run. And unfortunately, that just did not happen. Now, the Chiefs are a very, very different opponent coming up on Sunday, week 2. And their offense is really hard to stop because they stretch the field so well, right? With Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelsey. Then you got Mahomes as an X factor. I mean, their defense, they talked about tackling last week. Their defense must be in position and they have to wrap up guys when they have the opportunity. They have got to make those tackles. There cannot be mishaps when facing the Chiefs. What are you worried about anything defensively on the Bengals side when knowing that they are facing the Chiefs in week 2?
No. And go ask the Kansas
Confidence. I
City
like it.
Chiefs, are they worried? And they'll say yes. There's one team that plays the Kansas City Chiefs better than anybody the last few years. It is the
Good point.
Cincinnati Bengals. And
Yeah.
even last year when they went to the Super Bowl, it came down to maybe 2 or 3 plays
Hmm.
toward the end of the game. But every game that the Chiefs play the Bengals, the Chiefs know that it is going to be the longest day for them, even at Arrowhead.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or Burrowhead, if you
it's
ask
on
Mike Hilton.
paper. Yeah, it's documented that the Bengals play the Chiefs better than anybody. So, a lot of people think, oh man, well, they're after what we saw this week, they're going to get blown out and run out of town. Go ask the Chiefs. I guarantee you, there's not a player in Kansas City who's saying, "Oh man, we're looking forward to this breezy Sunday afternoon." It's no, this team has been a thorn in our side,
Yeah.
and we know that they're coming to redeem themselves after their game one. I think the only thing that I don't like is that they got to play on Thursday and they got a lot of rest
Right.
in between game one and game two, and maybe they got too much rest and they'll come out sluggish.
That is a very good point. I think the Bengals kind of feel again, it's week 2. but I think that they do feel a little bit of pressure because they are in a situation where they do not want to, again, start another year 0-2 and have to be in a position where they kind of have to claw out of that hole.
Well, the thing of it is, if you haven't been successful before, there's cause for concern or panic.
Yeah.
But when you've done it and you've rebounded from it, you understand what you need to do. And I think that's what they're looking at, is they know what they need to do. And the great thing about having a nucleus of guys who are part of that Super Bowl team and having a nucleus of guys who are at the top of their game, uh, you don't worry about that. You worry more so about staying healthy. So this team has already had enough injuries for the year. They need to stay healthy and create more depth at certain positions for the 17-game season.
And again, a small sample size, but the Bengals secondary ranked third in the league as far as pass yards allowed. So Jacoby Brissett really didn't want to pass the ball, didn't pass the ball. He handed it off the majority of the game. But what do you think that the Bengals absolutely need to do in order to stop the run? They've got to stop Isaiah Pacheco on Sunday if they decide to go that route.
Well, I remember a defensive coordinator told me once, you simply want to win the line of scrimmage by 1 yard.
Okay.
You want them to play 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage. The other team, the offense, wants to play 1 yard in front of the line of scrimmage. And so I think that's what they have to do. I think they have to force the Chiefs to play 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, because if you do that, then it's going to be harder for Pacheco to be explosive and to get through an opportunity to make a big play. If they do that, I think they'll be fine. I mean, you got some cleanup guys with Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither and Jermaine Pratt.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can control that line of scrimmage and make them play 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, it makes it difficult to run the football. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they play at the point of attack, to see if they can control that line of scrimmage and move that yard back. Because if they can do that, it makes it tough for them to run the ball. And if you're in a longer down the distance, as you know, then Lou Anarumo gets to do what Lou Anarumo does and do a lot of disguises, blitzes, whatever he wants to do. But you just have to get them 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage.
That's a very good answer. I appreciate that. And I want to know what you thought about, because yesterday, I'm sure you saw all of the viral videos that were going around about the way Joe Burrow was picking up the water bottle, flexing his hand and rolling his wrist and doing all the things. I feel like he's been doing that for years, but that was really put on display. And then he was asked about it on Wednesday, and he was just kind of like, what did I do wrong? What did I do now? Like, kind of worried a little bit when he was being asked the question. But what do you make of that situation? Do you think that, because I think the big reason people were harping on it was because he did not take a lot of deep shots on Sunday, and he didn't necessarily seem comfortable in the pocket, but that could also be the fact that it was his first game back in a very long time. What do you think was the deal with that, with his not unwillingness, but his lack of deep shot efforts, I guess, on Sunday?
Because he's a smart quarterback, and smart quarterbacks don't force the ball into coverage. And if you want to beat the Bengals, we know historically the last couple of years, the teams that have beat the Bengals have done what? They've taken away the deep ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Burrow, I always go back to the Las Vegas Raiders game. When Joe Burrow won that game, it was probably the ugliest statistical game he had, but it was by far the most brilliant game that he played because he took what the defense gave him, and it was just a dink and a dunk and a drop off and a handoff. It just, if you're a quarterback and somebody that plays fantasy football, it was no fun.
Right.
But to a football person, me watching football, I love that game. And so I think what happens a lot of times is people, again, forget. Mayo knows Jamar Chase can get behind this defense easily. We're not going to let him do that. And so if we have to overemphasize protecting the deep ball, we're going to do that to keep everything underneath. And I really think that's all it was, because I think of the games that they lost. If you remember back 2 years ago, and Jamar wasn't getting the ball deep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's wrong with the team? What's wrong with the team? They can't throw the ball deep. They can't get the ball down the field. It doesn't make any sense. Well, they're playing back. And slowly but surely, over the course of that season, the Bengals kept going underneath, underneath, underneath. And as guys got film, they pulled their safeties up a little bit more. And then the big plays happened. So, again, I think people are impatient. Like they want to see Jamar go deep on the first play of the year. They want to see him go. They want Burrow to go 27 for 34, 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and just have highlights all over ESPN. And Gerard Mayo says, you're not going to get 3 touchdowns and be on ESPN on me. I'm going to drop my safeties deep in the coverage. And Joe Burrow, because he's a smart quarterback, is going to look and say, I see the sucker move. Like, you're not baiting me to try to go deep. Because I'm going to tell you something. His secondary, Mayo's secondary, played a really good game.
Mm-hmm. They did. They did play a good game. Very quality. And I think sometimes even as a media member, I've been covering this team for over 10 years. Even I fall into the trap of wanting to see exciting, fun, like some fun, exciting product. Like I want to go and like spend my time, even though I'm at work, but I still want to spend my time watching a high quality, really fun, electric, explosive type of game. And unfortunately, that's not always going to be the case because defensive coordinators are extremely smart, especially in the AFC.
And we're spoiled.
Yes.
Right?
And they're dialed in on Burrow, dialed in on him. And what we don't remember is that Burrow is one of the best in the league at reading a defense and being able to kind of manipulate that a little bit, but really take what the defense gives him in a way.
Yeah, when you think in boxing, they say styles make fights. Mm-hmm. And in football, it's the same thing. It's just except you don't really think about it in those details. But those styles, if I know that you're a long ball thrower or a knockout puncher, I'm not going to give you room to deliver the knockout blow. I'm probably going to get in your chest and try to work my jab, work some body shots, but I'm not going to let you load up and knock me out. The same thing with football. If you know Jamar Chase can get deep and get past their safeties, or he ends up in one-on-one coverage with a corner, you're not going to let that happen because you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. If Jamar Chase is one-on-one with your guy, you're probably going to lose. So we, at all costs, have to make them find another way to beat us. And again, you got to credit Joe Burrow for just understanding if it's not there, then it's not there. But we're spoiled, and I'm one of them. Every time they line up, I raise up and I'm thinking, is this the double move play where he's just going to give somebody this move and then just go. And then Joe Burrow's just going to lay the ball right in his bread basket and then the whole place is going to go crazy. Well, yeah, we'd like that. But at the end of the day, the other team is saying,
Yeah, I think so too. They're very, very smart when playing a guy like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Like they are dialed in on the way these guys move, their talent, everything. And I want to know, are you able to give me a prediction? Are you allowed to do that?
To give you a prediction?
Yeah. I want to know what you
I could give you
think.
A prediction, but I don't necessarily do predictions. So, I mean, because people ask me all the time, and I'll be honest with you, someone asked me about the first game, and I said the Bengals will win.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Okay.
But I think that the Bengals can beat the Chiefs because the Bengals have beat the Chiefs. Not once. Mm-hmm. They beat them multiple times. And so, as I said earlier in our conversation, the Chiefs know that the Bengals can play them as well as anybody. I mean, it's on record, it's on video, it's data, it's whatever you want to use to justify your argument. This team plays the Chiefs better than anybody. So to think that they can't go into Arrowhead and beat Kansas City, you're terribly mistaken, as much as I was terribly mistaken about thinking New England couldn't come in here and beat us. So I will only say that this team is going to go out there and you are going to see the Bengals that you're accustomed to seeing. And you don't have to get up for this game. You don't need a pep talk. You don't need a Newt Rockney or any of that. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bengals. The last 3 years, these teams have gone to the Super Bowl representing the AFC, and they're probably going to be in the thick of things again this year. I know a lot of people think that other teams now may be there, but
Yeah.
I don't see the Jets going there with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Houston, yes, they may be a formidable opponent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Buffalo going. To me, they're too inconsistent. Everybody else is hoping to get on a run and get in a rhythm. But I think at the end of the day, most people think that three teams will probably be there in the end, and that's the Chiefs, the Bengals, and probably the Texans, because they really added a lot of necessary parts to their team to put them in that position. But these two teams are going to battle on Sunday, and I believe the Bengals have the ability to come out with a W.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that the Bengals will respond well. I think Lou Anarumo will have some crazy defenses and some disguises and everything mixed in there. And I think the offense is so keyed in on the fact that they realize that they have got to keep 15 Mahomes off the field. So the longer they are on the field, the way they can extend drives, they will be able to keep their defense off the field, watch them from the sideline, keep them fresh. So then when they do have to deal with Mahomes, the Travis Kelce, the Xavier Worthy, that they will be able to do so. Box, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that it's going to be an exciting game on Sunday. I think the Bengals will probably win 24-21 would be my prediction. But I appreciate your time, and I'm so grateful that you joined me.
Well, thank you for having me on. As I said, you and I go back a long way, and I'm so proud of you for all that you've done and are doing. I think I was just thinking about telling someone about Betsy Ross and how, to me, she was a pioneer of being on ESPN way back in the day.
Big time.
But I think that you helped to kind of continue that change of the narrative about women in sports, not only just being on TV, but I think I have more respect for you in the locker room and your ability to interview players, because I think you and I have a similar philosophy about how to approach players with respect and with some kindness, so to speak. So I'm always rooting for you and wishing you all the best, and waiting for a few of your recipes to land in my inbox.
Box, you're making me blush. Thank you so much for being so kind. And yes, I will send you some. You know who else is a good cook, Box?
Who?
Supposedly Trent Brown likes to cook. I have to find that out, but I've heard that he likes to cook too.
Yeah, I know Cam Sample does a little bit, because both his parents are, I think his dad's a chef maybe, but both his parents are good cooks.
See, this is great info that I love knowing about people.
Yes.
I love knowing random facts about the players.
I asked Cam Sample, I said, if your mom cooks, your dad cooks, which one are you going to go to? And he's like, no.
Don't put me in that position.
That's that one.
I was actually, I don't know if this is just a random fact, but Trent Brown, I was talking to him yesterday, and I sat down and I noticed right away how big his shoes were. And I said, what size shoe do you wear? And he goes, 18. And I go, when's the last time you were able to walk into a shoe store and just purchase a pair of shoes off the rack? And he's like, maybe 5th grade.
Yeah. Unless he goes to Freeman's in Atlanta.
Yeah. Like, that is crazy to think about. No one else really thinks about that, because we all just live in the parameters of normal people's stature.
Big people problems.
Yes. And he's like, he said he couldn't even fit in the exit row on a plane. Like,
my OTR is not over the Rhine, it's off the rack.
Right. I love it. Fox, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining me.
All right, take care. Thank you for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.
That is it for this week. Wayne Boxmiller is truly one of the best around, one of the best in the locker room. I've learned so much from him over the years, and I'm really hoping that you guys were able to learn a lot from him on this episode and take something away in preparation for week 2. This has been Deep in the Stripes. Click subscribe, like this video. That only helps us, get this information and get our reviews and our analysis out into the world of Bengal land, and I will see you right here next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.